Hi guys, Sarah here from Highland Haven Australian Shepherds, and welcome to episode 2 of my dog breeding video series. I want to start by giving a shout out to those of you who posted encouraging comments on episode 1. I've never done anything like this before, so it was really nice to hear and gave me confidence to do episode 2. So let's get into it. If you remember from the last video, my breeding female Meadow is in heat, and I'm getting ready to breed her to my stud dog Ty. You may ask, how do I know she's in heat? Well, there's a couple of ways. The first way is her vulva will swell. She'll become a bit of a baboon butt. She has longer hair, so she's a bit discreet, but if you have a really short-haired dog like a pointer, it's going to be really obvious. The second and more reliable way to know that she's in heat is that she has bloody discharge. She begins to bleed. It's not copious amounts, don't panic. It's basically a dime-sized droplet of blood on a floor somewhere. Usually I find it in my kitchen where the lightest floors are. And that is when I know she's in heat. So I go to my record keeping, and we're going to talk a lot about how important record keeping is, and mark that day as day 1. Currently, she is day 6 in her heat cycle. Once your dog is in heat, you are going to start seeing some behavior changes. For Ty's part, he is going to be a bit interested in Meadow. He's going to get more and more interested as each day passes. He's going to be sniffing her urine outside. He's going to be tasting it. He's going to be doing a lot of drooling. He's going to be following behind her in the house and sniffing and tasting her herself. So as you can see, breeding dogs is not for the faint of heart or the squeamish. These are biological and instinctual behaviors. And you just get used to it when you live with it. For Meadow's part, her behavior changes. It varies from female to female. Some females will get more grumpy. Some will get more affectionate and clingy. Meadow is already super affectionate and clingy, so I don't really see a behavior change there. But she does tend to get a little quieter. She'll spend more time sleeping, and she tends to hang out with her mom more rather than hang out with the group in general, because Ty is beginning to pester her every day. So let's talk about the heat cycle itself. Most of you know that most breeds come into season twice a year, so about every 6 months. There are a handful of breeds that do only come into season once a year, but most breeds come into season twice a year. Within those breeds are individuals, and there's a great variability within individuals. Remy, for instance, Meadow's mom, was on a 4-month cycle. She always came into season every 4 months. And interestingly enough, when Meadow became sexually mature, she was on a natural 6-month cycle. When Ty moved into the house as an intact male, Meadow then synced her cycle to her mother and went from a 6-month cycle to a 4-month cycle, which is why I had 2 litters within 10 days last year, which was kind of exciting. Once I spayed Remy and she was no longer competition to her daughter, Meadow went back to her 6-month cycle. So stuff like that is super fascinating. I love to watch that kind of physiological change that these dogs do regarding their heat cycles. Each heat cycle itself is about 3 weeks, and that 3 weeks is broken up into 3 different parts. So right now, Meadow is in proestrus, which lasts about 10 days, 9-10 days, around there. Of course, again, there's variability within the individual dog, but typically it lasts 9-10 days. And during this part of her heat cycle, her eggs are maturing and getting ready to be released from the ovaries. During this proestrus time, as I said, Ty is going to become more and more interested in her, and she's going to be pretty bitchy about it. She is not ready to breed. She is not receptive to him. Her eggs are not ripe. She's not fertile at this point. So when he sniffs and pesters her, she's going to turn around and snap. Here's a couple of examples. Now, Ty is a really experienced stud. He is very reliable. So he knows that she is not ready to breed, but that's not going to stop him from testing her every 5 minutes. So it's really important that you are really watching your stud and your female and making sure that he is not driving her crazy. If he's pestering her and really just not leaving her alone, it's time to separate them into different rooms. On the flip side, if she is being really aggressive with him and biting him, it's not fair for him to get injured when he's just doing something that's really instinctual. Again, at that point, they would need to be separated. Generally, for Ty, I don't discipline him. It's not fair to discipline a dog who's just following instinct. So if he's really pestering Meadow, usually just calling his name and telling him to go lay down or enough, and he will generally break off and go lay down at this point. As she gets closer and closer to becoming fertile, the next stage of heat, which is called estrus, he is not going to listen to me, and that's a completely different animal. So the second part of heat is called estrus, and like I say, it starts around day 10. That's when her eggs will be released from the ovaries, and she will be receptive and ready to breed. I will not be breeding her on day 10. We'll touch on that in a minute. How will you know that she's ready to breed? You will start to see her flirt more with Ty. You will start to see her flag. Flagging is when her tail will go from one side to the other. She has a docked tail, so it doesn't get in the way of breeding, but you can imagine if you have a Labrador, the flagging is simply getting that tail out of the way, so breeding can occur. If you push on the top of her back, she starts to flag and stand still, that is a sure sign that she is receptive to a male. And that's what Ty's gonna do to test her. He's gonna walk over to her, he's gonna sniff her, he's gonna get super excited, and he's actually gonna rest his chin on her back and push down and see what her response is. Up until that point, her response would be turning around and trying to bite him. But as she becomes fertile within her heat cycle, she's gonna stand really still and sort of present to him and let him mount her. As I say, I'm not going to breed them on day 10. I breed them on day 14, 15, and 16. I breed them a little farther into her fertility. Breeders all do this a little differently. Some breeders like to breed on the first day that their female is receptive. Some wait really, farther into it. Some breeders breed every day. Some breeders breed every other day. I breed on day 14, 15, and 16. I find that it doesn't affect the size of my litter, but it does affect the sex makeup. So I will have a more evenly split male to female litter if I don't breed until day 14. That may be just completely anecdotal evidence on my part, but that's just how it works. It's always worked well for me. Most breeders will have a rest day in between two breedings. I let them breed 3 days in a row because honestly, it's such relief for Ty, and he's just so much easier to live with if I let him breed 3 days in a row. So that's estrus. That's when she's breedable and fertile. That's when, if you are not breeding your dog, you might have visitors at your house, dogs who are, running the neighborhood intact. We don't have a problem with that here. We have super tough leash laws, and virtually all the dogs, and we're surrounded by them, are spayed and neutered, except for me, because I'm the only one in this area that breeds. During this part of the heat cycle, during estrus, your male and female cannot be left alone. They cannot be left unsupervised. In fact, it's quite tricky living in a house with two intact animals where one is in heat, in that part of her heat cycle. Sometimes males will actually injure themselves trying to get out of crates or out of rooms to get to the female. So it can be really tricky. And I will show you videos of what we do here to manage that so that no one gets hurt, so my house doesn't get damaged. And so we breed puppies when I am ready to breed them. So the last part of heat is called diestrus. It's when she is no longer fertile and her hormones are then decreasing. Ty will begin losing interest in her, and usually by about day 18, 19, it's like she was never in heat. They can hang out together, everybody's cool and chill. In this case, this year, since I am breeding during this heat cycle, that's when we start to wait for puppies. A dog's gestation is 9 weeks. And I'll talk about when day 1 of that is in a future episode, but then we start to count down to having puppies if all has gone to plan. So that's it for this episode, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to comment or DM me. If you're enjoying this video series, please like, comment, follow, share, all that good stuff. Thanks, guys. See you next time. Bye.